Okay, so now let's take a look at arrays and functions. An array is a special variable which can hold more than one value at a time. In PHP, the array function is used to create an array, and also the opening and closed square brackets is the new syntax for arrays. So in PHP there are three types of arrays: the indexed arrays, these are arrays with a numeric index. You have your associative arrays. These are arrays with named keys. And also you have multi-dimensional arrays. So these are arrays containing one or more arrays. With functions, PHP has more than 1,000 built-in functions. And in addition to that, you can create your own custom functions. A function is simply a block of statements that can be used repeatedly in a program. So in programming, there's this practice that's called dry coding, and dry stands for don't repeat yourself. Okay, so the reason that we have loops and functions is so that we can put repetitive code, write repetitive code once and use it multiple times after that. So a function will not execute automatically when a page loads, but a function will be executed by a call to that function. So here we can see the syntax for a function. We start by declaring the function keyword, then your function name with the open and closed brackets, and then you open up your curly braces, and then inside your curly braces you will have your function code block. Okay, so now let's take a look at an example of how we would declare our own custom function. Alright, so here I have a little recap. So far in this course we have used the var dump function, which we know prints the value of variables. We have our define function, which we've used to declare a constant, and here we have our array declaration, which we'll use in a little while. So first, let's create our custom function, and here I'm going to make a function, and it's going to make coffee for different people. So here inside our parentheses we can simply declare what type of coffee, and we can give it a value, a default value. So let's say we like cappuccino. See if I can spell this correctly. Cappuccino, I believe that's how it's spelled. Let's open up our curly braces, and this is our code, our function code block. Alright, so this function is going to be fairly simple. It's only going to return a string. Alright, so we can say making a cup of, and here we're going to include our variable type, and we can throw a new line in here. So each time we print or call our function, it will appear on a new line. Okay, so to use our function, we can make a call to our function. So let's call it. And remember to include your parentheses anytime you're calling a function. So let's call this function a couple more times. Make coffee. This time we're going to pass in a null argument. Okay, so one thing to point out, when you are declaring a function, whatever you pass in to your parentheses is called a parameter, and you can have multiple parameters, as many as you want, separated by commas. Okay, so we could have another parameter int number of coffees, if I could spell, right? And we could have a default value equals to 1, and then we could have multiple parameters inside our parentheses, but we're just gonna have 1 for now. And when we call or make a call to our function, we're actually passing in an argument. So we can see here that make coffee, so if we save this file quickly, we can see here that make coffee accepts one parameter. And then let's now call our function another time, and let's pass in a different value. So this time we want an ice mocha. Okay, and one last call, so make coffee, we can pass in a espresso. Alright, so let us save this file and let's check it out in our browser. Let's change our file. I believe the name of our file is Arrays and Functions, so arrays underscore functions. Okay, so we get a printout of each one of those function calls. Alright, so initially this function will print the default value, which is cappuccino. In our second call, it will prints no value because we passed a null in. Alright, so that null completely deletes that value that's there. And now this is a new value pass in for these second ones. So let me just put my comments here, so you can see that each one of these calls we get our expected printout, and here we can see that we get those that printout for that function. So now let's take a quick look at how to declare an array. Okay, first we'll take a look at indexed arrays. So let me comment out this portion of code. Alright, so in an indexed array we can declare it using this array function. So let us try that method. So let's do an array of cars, and we will say cars equal array, and we can assign 3 cars to it. So let's do Honda Civic, Alfa Romeo, and we can do a Range Rover. Alright, so a simple array, and in order to print a value of the array, you can reference it by its index. So let us echo out a statement. So I'm going to say I like cars, so I like Honda Civics, and then reference our second element. So remember, an array's index starts at 0. So, and so since we have 3 cars in our array, the index would start at 0 and end at 2. Alright, so let's put a full stop here, and let us now save this and run it. So I like Honda Civics, Alfa Romeo, and Range Rover, and we can even join an S here. So to do that, we could simply just put an S here, save it, refresh. Right, I like Honda Civics, Alfa Romeos, and Range Rovers. Okay, so now let us try our new way to declare arrays. So let me just comment out this echo statement, and now I'll create an array of countries. So we can do it like so, and then we can say countries and specify that we're starting at index 0 equals, and of course I'm going to put Jamaica, and I'll copy and paste this to make it easier. So let's say I like Jamaica. Where else do I like? Trinidad and Tobago. And I also like, let's say, pick one that I could spell, Venezuela. Alright, so let's copy this echo statement here and just change the values. So now we're not dealing with cars, we're dealing with countries. So I'll change this to I like traveling to, and let's just remove this S here. Alright, so let us save this and test it out fresh. So I like traveling to Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Venezuela. Okay, so if I wanted to loop through this array and print the values in the array, I can simply do a for loop. So I'm going to introduce another method to you, and it's called count. So we can actually find out the length of our cars array. So let us let's create a variable and call it array length. We can say array length is equal to the count, which is a function, another built-in function of our cars array. So if we were to echo array length, let's save it and do a quick refresh, we should get 3. Alright, so that's the length of our cars array. Okay, so now that we have the length of our cars array, we can create a for loop that will loop through this array and print back all the values for us. So we can create a variable called x, as we did in our previous loops lesson. So for x less than, and let's say the array length, we're going to increment x by 1. So now in the body of this loop, we can echo our cars by simply saying cars, and we have x, which holds the value of that position in the array. So we can pass that x in here, and x in this case is our iterator. So then we can say echo, and we're just gonna do a new line after each line. So let us do that, save it. Okay, we're getting an error. Alright, not sure what that is saying. Oh, we have a comma here, should be a semicolon. Alright, so let's save it, and now let's come back to our browser, and we get that printout of each one of our arrays of values. So remember, our index starts at 0. That's why we didn't have x is less than or equal to the length, because the length in this case was 3. But because our array starts at index 0 and ends at index 2, we have to say x less than our array length in order to get all those values. Okay, so finally let's take a look at associative arrays. We will save multi-dimensional arrays. Instead of multi-dimensional arrays, we'll look at working with MySQL database instead. So let's do a quick example with an associative array. Alright, so now we're going to use the new array type of declaration. So let us declare a variable called age, and we're going to say age is equal to, and we're going to use our square brackets in this case. So let us give this array 3 values. So remember, in an associative array we have sets of key value pairs. Alright, so we're going to use this syntax here to declare that Peter is our key and he is 35 years old, and that is the actual value. Okay, so let us do a couple more. So let us say Ben is 26, and let us do Jodianne, and she is 51. Okay, and we'll close this off with a semicolon, and now let's echo, and let's just pick echo Peter is, and we're gonna join or concatenate his age, and we're gonna pass in Peter as our key value, which will return his age as the value. Right, and let's do years old, and let us save this and check it out. So when we refresh, we get Peter is 35 years old. So we can see how when we passed in Peter as our value, as our key, that it returned the value. So let's do another one. So let's test for Jodianne, and we're gonna pass in Jodianne as our key. Let's save it, and we see here Jodianne is 51 years old. Alright, so that's pretty much it. We've got a pretty solid understanding of how built-in functions work and how to create our own custom functions, and we'll be diving a little bit more into creating some more advanced functions as we step into our next module. So we have our real-world example coming up in the next section, and now we have completed our first section, our first module. So look forward to seeing you in the next lesson.